Good afternoon, everybody out there. My name is JD Walker, and joining me is Brandon Kay. Welcome to Sports Den on Spanglish World Network, Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Kindly make sure to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free, so you know what? You can't beat the price there. One more thing, Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you, JD? This is a little bit unfamiliar waters, just us two on this show.
Yeah, we're working unsupervised today.
Yeah, we are.
Of sorts, but I think we'll be all right. We got it figured out.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so I guess we'll start with Major League Baseball. Mets and Yankees are playing each other in a two-game series this week. The Yankees took the first one in the Bronx after the Mets took the first two in Queens. But despite all that, I think that the Mets and the Yankees did some sort of did Uncle Stevie pay for some sort of voodoo to switch the Mets and the Yankees at the All-Star break? Because the Yankees are doing what the Mets normally do, and just in full-blown nosedive.
Yeah, you hear this all summer, not all summer, but basically after the All-Star break, it feels like all summer now that the Yankees have just been on this little bit of a slip. Last night, notwithstanding, from the Mets' point of view, you had that tough game in Philly where it was a back and forth all game. They were down 4-0. They tied it up, down 7-4. They tied it and went ahead and ended up winning 10-9. So it took a lot of offense out of them. There was a lot put in that game. And thinking going up Monday night against the Yankees, there could be a bit of an offensive letdown. But I didn't think that necessarily that would affect, like pitching too much. I think Scherzer was good. There were some pitches he didn't have his full command of. He wasn't as sharp as he normally is. And we saw a team that, even though they have a lot of offensive struggles at the moment, they could break out of it, with Aaron judging another home run and the whole nine. And it really felt like the teams kind of swapped mentalities where for a while the Mets, they would be down, hit a home run, and that would kind of be their only offense of the game rather than kind of a home run, string of hits, whatever. But the Yankees ended up kind of playing that role last night with how they performed. But I think it's going to be a better game tonight. We have Walker coming back from his stint on the injured list with back spasms. I think he'll be all right. I just think the bats will wake up tonight and they'll even this series. And again, we're not worried about these two games against the Yankees. We're worried about the games that happen in late October. So again, I think the Mets are in a fantastic position moving forward. We've talked about this at nauseum, how they have a very favorable September schedule. A couple tough series still to go with like the Dodgers and the Phillies and Braves still. But other than that, I think with the returning of starting pitching, we'll have some position players like Yorme and Escobar come back. I think the Mets are in a fantastic position for this last 5-6 weeks of the season.
The Mets ended up with two of the best deadline acquisitions without having to give up anything by getting Scherzer and DeGrom back from their own IL. And we talked about how with this with the past week and with the current stint with the Yankees that we wanted to see the Mets go at least 500, which they're right at that clip. Depending on what happens tonight. They do have an easy schedule in September, one of the easiest schedules remaining in all of baseball for the remainder of the season. But the Braves schedule was pretty easy as well, and they're only 4 back. So just as a lifelong Mets fan, I'm still a little worried because they should have put them away last week, and they did. They could have easily stomped them, opened up a 6-7 game lead, and had a lot more breathing room down the stretch, but they didn't really do that, and the Phillies, who they've handled okay all season, once they could be dangerous, as Sammy said with us last week, they could be very dangerous in the playoffs, once they get Harper back and once they get their pitching in order. So the Mets, I don't think, are quite out of the woods just yet, but they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, depending on the day, I don't know which team, Philly or Atlanta, kind of is scaring me a little more, which one I'm really looking over my shoulder at. But I think it's a situation now where destiny is we hear this in football all the time, coming down to these teams that have like a wild card seed or whatever. You win your games, you win out, you control your own destiny, you're a playoff team, right?
Yeah.
We hear that all the time. And I think we're going to get to the point where the Mets you do what you need to do, take care of business, and hey, even if you win the division by a half game, you won the division. You know, you can't control what Atlanta does. You can't control what Philly does. You can control, for the most part, what you do. So if you come in for the rest of the season, you take care of business, I should see the Mets atop of that division.
It would, but it would be a Mets collapse in order for that not to happen, which we've seen it before. So that's just, I want to be excited. I am excited as a Mets fan, but we've seen this before. Diaz, Diaz could become Armando Benitez in the playoffs for all we know. The Mets have had closers blow up before. They've given up leads before, both in the regular season and lost a playoff series where they shouldn't have. So, but this is by far the best Mets team that I've seen in years. Even better than the talent here is better than the 2015 team at this point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we forget too that 2015 didn't happen until the trade deadline, until you got Cespedes and all these other guys. And we remember the Wilmer Flores walk-off against the Nationals, which seemed to kind of jumpstart the rest of the season. No, the Mets have been a true contender from winter meetings to spring training to opening day until today. And they just have to finish out, like you said, they're not out of the woods, but I still think they are in a very good position, take care of business, and they should be in a good spot and have a first round bye in the opening round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it looks like the Dodgers are running away with the best record in baseball. They keep up their current win percentage. That'll be 113 wins. Mets at 104. And then whoever wins the Central probably around the 95 to 98.
95, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which probably is going to be the Cardinals. And then it's the wild card teams that are really shifting spots. And at a certain point, the seeding really, I don't even think it'll matter, because it'll probably be Philly, Atlanta, and San Diego.
Where the seeding matters is that I want no part of Atlanta in the playoffs. I want, if Atlanta can stay, it will probably stay in the 4 slot. So with the Mets winning the division and getting the 2 seed, they would play whoever wins the 3-6 series, which would be the Central winner and the last wild card.
Right.
So then it's about, who you want to take your chances against in a 5-game division series. Would you rather have San Diego, who would probably just make it by the skin of their teeth at that point? Do you want the Phillies, who are finding their way later in the season and have momentum on their side? Do you want the Braves, who have been a bit of a thorn in the side for the Mets? Pick your poison at that point. Do you want a Brewers team getting hot and sneaking in at the last minute? I mean, while the Mets are in good shape as far as getting into the playoffs, everything is a crapshoot once you get there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the standings now. We have Milwaukee at in that 7th spot, Giants in that 8th spot. It'd be tough for me to see any scenario in which the Giants slip into a wild card spot. So I'm gonna cut it off there and say the Brewers are that in the hunt team.
Yes.
If you had a preferred first team to play in the first round, who would it be?
That's a tough. I said the Phillies until And so we talked with Sammy last week, and he brought up the point about their pitchers and Schwarber and Harper coming back. But now I'm not really sure. I may lean towards San Diego just because San Diego doesn't have the pitching.
No.
With Tatis getting suspended, I believe he's out for the playoffs. With the 80-game suspension. So it's really just Soto, and if they do make it, I think they will just be hanging on for dear life. I don't see a real hot streak from this team. But if the Brewers get hot and take that final spot from San Diego, they could be dangerous. And I just don't like playing the Cardinals in the postseason because the Cardinals have always been that team that they just get the lucky bounce right when you need. It's 2006 still sticks in my craw a little bit, where it feels like the Cardinals, it feels like they take the first half of the season off every year, and then they turn it on and get into the playoffs because they're playing an absolute joke of a division that shouldn't exist. And then, with a bunch of small market teams that aren't even trying, and they go on a run. They're good for an outside of the Yankees, and at this point, past the Yankees, they're one of the most consistent teams in baseball, where they're good for an NLCS. They've made an NLCS something like 12 of the last 25 years. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's in that range where they're there every year. The Cardinals rarely bottom out. Even like they might have a year where they're not as good, but they're not 100 loss bad. I don't recall a season in my lifetime where the Cardinals have ever been that bad. Like the worst I can think of is about 75, 76 wins.
Yeah.
The Cardinals never completely bottomed out like that, at least not in the past 30-ish years.
I've been saying all year that there's something in St. Louis where the return of Pujols and the trio of Wainwright and Yadier, their final kind of rodeo. I think there was something to that, and I mean we'll talk about Pujols in a minute. But the Cardinals are this team that is so consistent at being consistent, if that makes any sense. Like, to me, as a team that I love dearly, they remind me very much so of the Miami Heat, in which they are so well run from top to bottom. They are always competitive. They are always kind of making moves that make sense, that seem to serve a purpose. And they're always in the mix of things, whether they're not winning the whole thing. They're in the 5 or 6 teams that are really fighting for it. If I had to choose a team to play in the first round, or I guess it would be the first round that the Mets play, say that they get a bye. But there's part of me that says maybe take one like a Philly or Atlanta and get them out of the way early. And then hope maybe another team, after they get beat up on the other side, then you kind of take them off in the next round. But then there's the part that's like, I want to give our chance the best spot to get to the next round. So then there's like the Padres and the Brewers and that. If I definitely had to pick one, it would be Philly or San Diego. I would say San Diego also, just for the strength, and if they can even hang on to that final card, wild card spot. But a second team would be the Phillies.
Yeah,
there's some. Yeah, I don't know. Like with everyone coming back, but then again, maybe wait till the next series. So if I wanted to play, Atlanta and have another round of them taking, 5, 6, 7 games, it's so tough, and that's baseball is so much more of a chess game than people realize.
Right.
And I think on paper, the Mets would be favored, I think, against any of those teams in the first round. But some of those teams, I think, can give the Mets some fits.
Yeah, and also for any team they play, they will have the momentum of winning their first series, because in the first round, wild card series of 3 games. So while they might be misaligned on their pitching, they will have the momentum of winning of winning 2 out of the previous 3 coming in, while the Mets are sitting at home. So that could work. That could work for or against them. That remains to be seen, since this is the first year with this new playoff format.
Right.
Not counting the COVID 2020 60 game third of the season. That can't. I personally think that 3 game series is. I do prefer that to the 1 game wild card, and I would personally realign the both leagues into 2 divisions who would have buys and 4 wild cards, and then you have the 4 wild cards playing each other. But that's just but I know that's just my personal thing. I don't.
No,
that I know will never happen.
It's baseball trying to hold on very hard to their old traditional ways, where this playoff format, it doesn't even feel baseball. It feels like they just took football, NFL's format, or a different, it doesn't feel like baseball. But
that's basically what they did as far as the 1 through 6 with 3 division formats. It's the old NFL.
And I think Major League Baseball is going to need to maybe make some moves or make some decisions that might seem like out of the norm and uncomfortable, because it's exciting because, and Scott's a proponent of this. He thinks baseball is going to kind of in years kind of fall by the wayside in terms of how popular it is, and it's starting to dip now. But I think baseball needs to do some stuff to really kind of re-spark the whole kind of passion for baseball.
Also, the season is too long. I did figure out a formula for balanced divisions, and balanced series, as far as how many times do you play teams in your division, without the division, interleague, and so forth, and it comes out to 156 games. But that unfortunately only works in 4 8-team divisions with 32 teams. So we would need 2 expansion teams, which I do think, despite nothing saying that we actually need 2 extra Major League Baseball teams, I do think it will happen, because that happens every time the owners screw up and are desperate for money. The last 2 expansions to bring in money after the collusion settlement and the strike for the 93 and 98 expansions, respectively. So I do think that will happen, but they need to figure out the situation with Tampa and Oakland first, and where those teams go, because their current situations are untenable. And I wouldn't be surprised if another Midwest small market team does move at some point, just because the economics in those cities and the owners that aren't rich enough to compete just finally tap out and sell to somebody, and then some city's going to get screwed.
Well, there are stories that came out today that Angels owner, that they're looking to possibly sell the Angels. Now, would they be moved out of LA or even out of California? Maybe. But
that's a tough one, and it would be similar to the A's situation, where they're kind of stuck because they share territory with another team. One of the reasons why the A's situation is such a mess is because the Giants have blocked every time they've tried to move. Their territory is basically within the city of Oakland, or they leave. Vegas is rumored. I personally don't see how baseball in Vegas works.
It's too hot.
It's too hot. You need a dome, and also, is there enough of a fan base and the corporate base there to support the team for 81 home games in the desert? I don't think there is. I mean, you can do it. You can do it with football with the Raiders, because it's only 8 home games a year. You can do it with hockey during the winter, because there's more to do during the winter, and it's easy casino comps, because of how prevalent 41 NHL home games are versus 8 for the Raiders. Does that work for 81 baseball games during the summer in the desert, in a region that is very shaky economically, I'm not so sure. Personally, I think that the A's are better off in Portland. And as for the Angels that you mentioned, funny that because their issues with their stadium, I read something a few weeks ago that there was, I don't know if it was the mayor of Anaheim or somebody on the city council um, that was taking bribes related to renovation or something with the Angel Stadium and was forced to resign. So that situation ends up is probably one of the things that has the Angel situation up in the air. That and the fact that Artie Moreno is an absolute idiot who's wasting the careers of two of the best players in baseball.
So yeah, it's really these topics of team ownership and franchise moving. Unless there's something, even a rumor that's somewhat solid, these things are so up in the air and so kind of few and far between that it's really almost impossible to measure these things. Yeah, baseball in Vegas is tough. There would be so many logistical bumps in the road they would have to get over. Yeah, a team in Portland, I like that. I never thought of Portland for a baseball team, but that would work. I'm trying to think what else. Maybe a New Orleans or
New Orleans is another place that doesn't really work. It's a smaller city, and it's a smaller city, and it's too hot. So I think it'd be similar to Vegas. Oddly enough, both places have successful AAA franchises that were at one point affiliated with the Mets over the past few years.
Yeah.
You know, and you remember how much of a mess it was when the Mets had Vegas as their AAA affiliate.
Oh,
you know, and about how hard the adjustment was between Vegas and New York. But while they did build a new stadium, it is nowhere near major league level.
No. What was that? What were they? The Vegas, the 51s? What were they? The Area 51s?
Yeah, it was they were called the Las Vegas 51s. They have changed their names since then. Let me look up real quick. You know what they changed to.
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't know. Maybe the A's, the Angels moved to Sacramento. Stay in California there, but
no way.
There's baseball with this is very tough.
Las Vegas Aviators, they're called.
Aviator. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, and we should but Vegas, I don't think is sustainable personally. But it's all speculation at this point. You know, for the teams that are playing on the field, you know, and with the Yankees in their tailspin, you know, for 5 reasons of concern. You know, since they won last night, they have a 180 batting average and 249 on base percentage over the past two weeks, and they're 5th worst in runs scored, ahead of only Oakland, Detroit, Cincinnati, and Miami. Yikes. Yeah. And this is a team that is somehow running away with the AL East?
I don't know. They're starting to slow down. That lead was, 2 weeks, or I guess at All-Star break, 15 and a half games? It was between 10 and 15, or like maybe 12 and 15 games, and now it's down to, 8? So
I think 7 or 8 was the last I saw, and you know, of the start, and you know, because it was the 5 items that we had that were mentioned in our headline here, and you know, just paraphrasing here, we have the Cole and Montas are the only starters for the Yankees that have any postseason experience.
Yeah, and then really Judge on the offensive end.
Yeah.
And I mean, his postseason numbers don't blow you away.
Yeah.
The Yankees are in a tough spot, and you hear Aaron Boone. It's right in front of us. It's right in front of us. I mean, and we could joke and kind of poke fun at the slamming of the table and being all defensive and kind of butt hurt about the situation, but he's right though. It is there, and they do just have to pull it together.
Yeah, and they do, and they need to fast. I mean, I don't see them making it past the division round. This Scott has pointed out, and I agree, that this Yankees team reminds me a lot of the mid 2000s Yankees teams, like the last few years with Joe Torre, 2005, 2007, right. Where they would have a good regular season, usually win the AL East, and then just die in the first round every year. It was right. Just first round and out. And I would be very surprised if they even made it past the division series.
Do you see them losing the division and becoming a wild card team?
While I would be absolutely elated to see that, because if Aaron Boone is melting down and smacking tables now, what's going to happen when that happens?
Flip and throw things.
Yeah, and if that happens and the Mets go on and win a World Series, then they'll just be a crater where Yankee Stadium used to be because of all their heads exploding at once.
Yeah, it'll just be another empty lot. Yeah, no, I think, forgetting our fandom, full objectivity, I think in the grand scheme of things, the Mets still have a better chance to win it all than the Yankees. These two games, last night, tonight, it's jack squat. It doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Another point of baseball before we finish our baseball for the afternoon, Albert Pujols. We mentioned the Cardinals mm-hmm. before. Albert Pujols has been this last week or two on such a historic pace of offensive production. It's crazy. It seems so fitting and so storybook, and it feels baseball. Like that's what should happen.
Yeah.
It feels like he's currently sitting at 693. And about probably around up to the All-Star break, people were like, he'll high 600s, but I don't think he'll hit the 700 mark. Like it just seemed like it was just a little too out of reach. But we're sitting here with over about 6 weeks to go, and he's got 7 home runs to hit. It's a lot to ask for, but it feels like it's going to happen.
Yeah, 7 home runs with how he's done over the course of the season. It looks like it could be hit or miss, because it was, up until a few days ago, he needed 10. And I read some things saying, he might get to A-Rod, but at 696, but 700 is tough. And then he goes out and hits 3 in 2 days and changes the conversation completely. So it would be fantastic to see a home run chase with people that aren't blatantly or very strongly rumored to be on steroids.
Right. Yeah.
Same with Judge. Same with Judge going for 61 home runs.
Yeah, it's as much, and we, especially me, I joke about it. And the home run last night was to guess where, Little League porch, right field. Yep. But yeah, if the any kind of steroid PED came from Judge, even me as a Mets fan, I would be kind of slightly disappointed because from the second he came up, I actually liked him a lot, and I still do. Mm-hmm. One of the few Yankees where I've really kind of more than accepted and actually enjoy having him in the kind of on the same city and as a player and everything. And yeah, I mean he's just another historic pace for 61 homers. It's funny because him and Pete were going neck and neck for a while, and Pete's still at 30 home runs. And Judge just continued on a trajectory of just loading them out there. But to the Pujols,
is Judge at now? He's at 44.
Oh, he's 48, 47. I think last night was 47 or 48. Yeah, so another 13 in 6 weeks. So that's 2 home runs a week for the rest of the season. Which I mean, at his rate this season, It seems very likely. There are a few times, and like I've started with now that the sports gambling and stuff like that, I'm like, man, do I want to add Aaron Judge hitting a home run to my parlay tonight? Like, it really feels very like it will happen at virtually every at bat. And he's running away with AL MVP. And Yankees better be careful because you don't you might be all the Yankees whatever, but the minute Aaron Judge leaves, if he does, y'all are going to be up in flames.
Yeah, it's real tough because with Judge, the Yankees are all about star power, have been for 100 years. But Judge is the closest thing to any kind of star power that the Yankees have. The Yankees are boring, because they've always had some big outsized personality from Babe Ruth through DiMaggio and Mantle, Reggie, all the way up, Jeter, all the way forward. Judge is the one that has that now, and even Judge is sort of muted by Yankee standards. But there is really no other huge star power on this team. So, but also it is a huge financial risk to sign a player who, despite the great season he's having, he turned down $200 million extension and bet on himself. Now he's probably closer to 300. Did the Yankees or any other team want to pay that for somebody who probably has about 1-2 more good years before the injuries start piling up? This is Judge's first season where he's actually stayed healthy since his rookie year. So, and with his build, he's going to break down fast. So it's a buyer beware for whoever signs him. Although if the Yankees re-sign him, they're at least, when any player signs a big extension with their own team, they're at least paying on past production with that team.
100%.
The same way, like from a Mets fan perspective, the David Wright contract was in retrospect terrible, but at least, from a financial standpoint, insurance fraud for injury notwithstanding. But since he was our homegrown player, it didn't hurt as much as paying for a player from somewhere else and signing him to a huge contract, and then they disappoint, which both the Mets and the Yankees have done that plenty. So it's different for that, but also it feels like Robinson Cano, and how there was a segment of the fan base that was up in arms when he left for Seattle for that huge deal, which ended up being just as pathetic as expected. And now he needs PEDs in order to even be able to stay on the field. So I could see something similar happening with Judge.
And the Mets in that trade for Cano, we didn't care about Cano. We weren't trying to get Cano. Mm-hmm. We wanted Diaz, and we and stuff like that. We took on the Cano deal, and how many? I honestly, it really ended up bothering me to a point. The first year, all right, fine, whatever. Like, and then he was with the team for a couple years, and just no hustle at first, and the PEDs and everything. It's like we could have somebody else. We could bring in another veteran, right, like they had in 2015, where it really could have been more impactful than it was. And yeah, I'm good riddance.
Yeah. So I mean that trade and that trade now doesn't look as awful, but that trade was really two trades in one, because it was bad contract swaps.
Right.
With Jay Bruce, it was essentially two trades in one, with Jay Bruce going to Seattle for Cano, one bad contract for another, with Seattle retaining salary, mm-hmm. and Kalenic and prospects for Diaz. So everybody, early on with Diaz's struggles and how, in my opinion, Diaz single-handedly cost the Mets a playoff spot in 2019. And I've been skeptical the whole season that he would maintain this dominance, but he's proved me wrong so far. We'll see if he keeps that up. And, since I don't live in the New York area anymore. I don't actually watch Mets games regularly. So I hadn't heard the intro music until a few days ago. And wow, that's, I don't want to say it's the same as Enter Sandman, but it's up there.
I know. I see a lot of that talk of which is better and stuff like that. And look, I think the fact that Enter Sandman is such a popular song, like it is such a mainstream song, I think it is somewhat clouded by that. But yeah, they're both, and I've been to a handful of Mets games this summer, not in a situation where Diaz has come out. So I've never, I think one time that we got it in person, man, it gets you.
Yeah.
It gets you.
Yeah, like when I watched a few clips of when there was even one where Buck said in a press conference, essentially like, I had to take a bathroom break, but I stayed because I wanted to watch this. I wanted to watch the stadium go nuts.
I know, and it's the beginning too, because it's like this like very bass, like boom, 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 and then the trumpets come in, like it's very timed. It really is, and he comes in between his slider, DeGrom and Scherzer's sliders this year, and just overall, man, they really have, when healthy, the best starting and closing pitching in baseball, and it's not close. It's really not close. The Edwin pitched in Philly the last game when they won 10-9, and he didn't look as great. Scherzer and DeGrom all in their last appearances didn't look great, but I think that's going to turn around very quickly. And we were supposed to get DeGrom and Scherzer against the Yankees, and then with Walker coming back, we didn't. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it's just another 2 days of DeGrom getting some rest.
It's also the entire team needs rest because this is a stretch of I think 13 games in 12 days. That they're finally finishing up tomorrow and finally getting an off day. Getting an off day tomorrow before the next series.
Yep, 4 against the Rockies.
Yeah, so we're in good shape, and we should pivot away from baseball a little bit for a little bit of talk of this week in Major League Soccer. We have the Philadelphia Union played 2 games last week on the road, split their road trip, losing 1-0 to Dallas on the road. Dallas is 3rd in the West, so there's no shame in that. And then they beat DC, one of the worst teams in MLS, beat them 6-0. They missed the extra point this time after beating them 7-0 at home earlier this season. So the Union remain in first place in the Eastern Conference, 5 points ahead of Montreal in second. Then New York City also won, so they're in third, I believe, a point behind Montreal. And then you have the Red Bulls in fourth, and then a logjam behind them where there's only 6 points separating 5th place and 13th place. So those last 3 playoff spots, because in Major League Soccer, there's 7 teams from each conference that make the playoffs. The top team gets a bye. And then you have 2 through 7 playing each other in the first round. So you have 3 playoffs. So you have 3 playoff spots in about 10 teams going for them, with a month left in the season. So it'll be fun to watch down the stretch. I don't recall off the top of my head who New York City plays next, and then Philly plays Colorado at home this Saturday. And the Red Bulls also won this weekend as well, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah. So the Union are still in good shape in first, and they have easily the best defense in the league, and some of the best goaltending. The scoring kind of wanes, from night to night. They really struggled with scoring earlier in the season, and in some of their road games, they've struggled with scoring. But they haven't lost yet at home. So if they stay in this top spot in the East and stay healthy through the playoffs, which was an issue last year with half the team out with COVID in the East Finals, then the Union are on a mission. After the Supporters Shield curse in 2020 with the best regular season record and then losing early in the playoffs, and then the COVID loss to NYCFC in the East Finals last year. I don't see the Union coming up short this year. The way that they've been playing, they're on fire and they're the hottest team in the league.
So you're telling me Philly can win it all?
I think they absolutely can. You know,
they
it
do
remains to see.
Showing up to that parade if they do?
Yeah, I am.
Oh.
See if I can get a Union parade and a Mets parade this year.
I know that's only with my Heat, with my 2 championships with LeBron 10 years ago. I had to vicariously through social media watch that parade and you know, so hopefully I can get a real life one with the Mets this season.
Yeah, I was too young for the Devils championships. I was in high school, so I couldn't go to their parades in the parking lot at the time. But at least I've seen some success with one of my teams. They kept me sane being a fan of the Jets, Mets, and Knicks growing up.
There you go. So I wanted to throw this topic at you. We're going to switch gears. We have about 10-ish to 15 minutes left on the show. Switch over to basketball because there's a handful of storylines going out there. But first, I wanted to kind of bring this topic up because it come to my mind a little while ago when after R.I.P. Bill Russell, when he passed away. And I was thinking about kind of, you hear all these talks about, you know, the Mount Rushmore and all-time where he's on the all-time list and everything like that. And I'm thinking to myself, and I want to hear your opinion, can't I have a Mount Rushmore list and that is different from a top 4, or we'll round it up to 5, top 5 list? Because, and the more I've thought about this, when I hear Mount Rushmore, that's I hear, you know, and we think the rock with the president's faces, it's supposed to last eternity, right? It's supposed to be this eternal representation of greatness, right? I think the 4 players that I would put on Mount Rushmore are not necessarily the top 4 players of all time. And I think there can be a kind of a discrepancy between the two. And I wanted to hear what you had to say on that.
It's tough because partly with it's hard to compare across different eras. You know, because like you have the Jordan versus LeBron debate, but I've never thought that was an apples to apples comparison for either player, because LeBron's style of play is closer to Magic than it is to Jordan. You know, Jordan compares better with Kobe and with Steph Curry, and also with the defense that bordered on assault that was prevalent in the NBA in the 80s and 90s that Jordan played with. If he was to play in a free-flowing game like this, like you see today, I think that Jordan playing today looks like Steph Curry.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
are the best play. So it's, and also you have centers versus guards. That also makes comparing them difficult as far as who are the best players versus who goes on Mount Rushmore. So you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
So like for an example, like Bill Russell for me is a guy that I would put on Mount Rushmore, but I don't know if I would put him in my top 4 or 5 players ever. Like when I do the players ever, I'm going on, you know, talent, what you did on the court, like the more kind of tangible stuff. But Mount Rushmore in terms of overall, you know, yeah, I'm putting Bill Russell up there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Are 11 championship rings not tangible enough?
Yeah, I mean, you know. So, and it got me thinking, and I'm trying to think if he might be the one player, maybe 1 or 2, because if I Mount Rushmore, I'm putting Jordan and I'm putting LeBron, I'm putting Bill Russell, but then that 4th spot on Mount Rushmore, I'm torn. I'm torn, but my top 4 players ever, I'll just keep it at 4. I'm going in order. Well, I'll go from top to bottom in order. I'm a LeBron guy. MJ, and then I flip flop, between where they go 3 and 4, but Kareem and then Larry Bird as my third or fourth. But I don't know if I would put Larry Bird on Mount Rushmore.
Right.
So there is like that, and I had never really thought of it until, sadly enough, Bill Russell died, and it was just kind of a thing where I think there can be a difference, and it was just something that came to mind, and because we hear these like the Jordan and these eras and the comparisons and these lists with basketball seemingly more than any other sport, because the way yes, there are positions in basketball, but compared to other sports, they're closer to the same exact position.
Yes.
Like clearly the difference between a quarterback and a pass rusher is galaxies different than even a guard and a center. So with that, that's my feelings on that. And, and obviously basketball and football, the Mount Rushmore versus top 10, that's a completely different, with the whole, millions of more players and the positions and logistics of everything. But yeah, I just think there could be a difference, and I wanted to hear what you had to say on it. So,
I mean, it's tough for that fourth spot is a tough one. If you're going with LeBron, Jordan, and Russell as a 3, and your fourth spot, you want to put Kareem?
I don't know. I Kareem or Magic or.
I've always been more of a Magic over Bird guy. But Magic versus Kareem, that's such a tough comparison because guard versus center. Magic didn't play as long because of the HIV diagnosis, so he doesn't have the scoring records that Kareem has, playing for 20 years versus 13 for Magic, or 12 actually. Sorry. So that's the other thing is the careers are so much shorter. Like you think about Magic and Bird, they only played for 12 and 13 years. Now you have LeBron. Going into year 20.
20, yeah.
Next year. I mean, yes, they direct to high school versus playing in college, but still.
No, and LeBron at his age was dropping 30 points a game last season. So and the thing is with him now, the scoring title, the all-time scoring title, really seems to be a tangible goal that he's trying to achieve.
Yes.
And kind of similar to the Pujols chasing 700. Like it is very possible that it'll happen this year.
I think it will. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll be early on in 2023-24 season. I think LeBron gets there. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. And I think so too. So just to keep it in basketball, another kind of major storyline that came out today, the Nets apparently are keeping the boys together, or at least one of the boys in KD. So they've come out.
He's the only one worth keeping.
Yeah. And said that Kevin Durant and them have come to an agreement, and he'll stay as a Net. And is this the year? Can this be the year that the Nets finally get their squad together? Like,
I don't think it is. Not, but just you want to talk about locker room chemistry issues. That locker room is more like a meth lab with the people in there. Between Durant, Simmons when he feels like showing up, and and Kyrie, the space cadet, when he lands between his flights into space.
Right.
The first move that they need to do is trade Kyrie for whatever they can get. Because at least if you get the other clowns out of there, and Simmons probably isn't going to show up anyway. He has no interest in actually playing the game of basketball, from what it appears. I mean, with the back issues and the mental health stuff that if he does legitimately have mental health concerns, I hope he's getting treatment. So I do want to say that. However, I'm skeptical of how serious that actually is, especially since it went from mental health concerns with the Sixers to all of a sudden, oops, I need back surgery. So I don't really, the Simmons factor is more of a distraction than anything else. And how awkward is it for Durant to now go out and try and play for the coach that he actively lobbied to get fired? That's a bit awkward, going out to play for Nash now, who he also handpicked that coach. Just, I don't know. He needs to make a lot of burner accounts to try and talk his way out of this one.
The thing with Steve Nash is funny because after the sweep against the Celtics, he came out and kind of was defending Steve Nash and was saying, like, look, he kind of was dealt this hand, and this, this is what happened. So he's kind of been flip-flopping on his position with Steve Nash. I've never been one to think that Steve Nash is the guy for the job. It is not a shot at Steve Nash. We all know what a kind of a basketball lifer he is, and what he's becoming and what he's done in this game. But coaching is a whole nother animal, and to come in as the head coach of this high-profile team with zero experience, it becomes a lot of inmates running the asylum, and that's what we've seen here. And can the warden get everything together? And maybe, I mean, he brought one big inmate brought back in, so it's tough. I don't think Steve Nash is the guy for this. If you want to keep him on the bench as an assistant coach, then by all means, that's a great assistant coach to have on your sidelines. He's just not the ego personality guy that, let's say, like a Phil Jackson was, or these guys that really were able to hone in on these egos and these personalities, get them to do what they need to do for the most part. Right? We see Dennis Rodman in his Vegas, episodes and stuff like that. But for the most part, like, he kept everybody in check. And they were able to obviously, do what they do in Chicago in the 90s. But I think the Nets situation is nowhere near that.
Yeah. Now,
a good point with Simmons, and we only have about a minute and a half, 2 minutes on the show.
Mm-hmm.
As important as Kevin Durant is, I still think the Ben Simmons deal is important, is almost equally important, because if you can have him fully engaged, your depth of the team now changes.
Yeah.
So you can make just these small moves on the back end of your roster, but if you don't have Simmons and fully engaged Simmons, I mean, do you really feel that great with Durant and up in the air Kyrie, with a Seth Curry and a Claxton and Edwards? I mean, those are good players, but when you go up against a Milwaukee and a Miami and a Philly and these other teams that are fully that are loaded more top to bottom, you might run into another buzzsaw, or the Celtics. That is the Boston Celtics. So they really still need to do a lot of moves. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in Brooklyn. But bringing in KD is obviously a huge, major piece that is now out of the way, if that is official. And the Nets,
well,
there's
it's
no
official
excuse.
with the contract that he signed a contract, and he actually needs to show up and play, unless he decides to pull a Simmons and not show up and play. Who knows?
Yeah, and again, that's really going to be it. Like, this is the year now where there's no excuses. You have to get it done.
Yeah,
you really do. And in 4 years, they have one playoff series win.
It's a disaster. It fits right in with the rest of the dysfunctional New York sports teams. Just real quick before we wrap up here, there was two other. We mentioned the passing of Bill Russell. There's two other passings that I wanted to acknowledge real quick. One is J.P. Pelsman, who was honored by the Jets with a moment of silence at their preseason game last night. He was a sports writer for the Bergen Record, for Newsday and Forbes and PirateCrew.com, covering the Jets and Seton Hall basketball. He passed away last month. He was very nice to me when I was working at when I was covering press conferences as a student at Seton Hall, and he was one of the seasoned writers. He was always very nice to me. R.I.P. JP, and also R.I.P. Pete Carril, one of the more influential basketball coaches in college, where he won over 500 games at Princeton in 29 seasons, and he ended his college coaching career by beating the defending champion UCLA in the 1996 NCAA tournament, and scared the heck out of Georgetown as a 16 seed in 1989. With a team featuring Alonzo Mourning. So for 29 years, over 500 wins, the Princeton offense, to slow the game down, was influential for many other college and high school coaches for years.
Yeah, no, definitely a shame. And honestly, some of that stuff is still in the NBA game today. So really revolutionary stuff. Yeah, that you did it. That's going to wrap up our time here for JD. I am Brandon K. We will see you next week on Sports Den, hopefully with the full gang back intact. But other than that, have a great night.